You are Locked On Giants Postcast, part of Locked On Sports San Francisco on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yo, what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Locked On Giants Postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. You may know me as the former producer for the Murph and Mac Morning Show on KMBR, and all good things must come to an end. And for the Giants, their 5-game win streak came to an end today as they dropped their final road game of the season, falling to the Diamondbacks 8-2 out at Chase Field. Mason Black had a really hard time throwing strikes today, gave up a career high in walks on his way to surrendering 4 runs over just 2 2/3 innings of work. That's not the direction we wanted to see him go in his final start of the 2024 season. And the offense reverted back to form as they went just 1 for 8 with runners in scoring position and struck out 17 times. Big yikes. We'll break it all down, but first, I want to thank all of you for watching us on the Locked On Sports San Francisco YouTube channel. Please, please, please hit that subscribe button if you aren't already subscribed. Thanks also for listening on the Locked On Giants podcast feed. However you're getting the show, we appreciate you making us your first listen following these Giants games. And for your second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On Giants Daily Show for more in-depth coverage. Ben Kaspick does a great job. This episode is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball. Get the Booking.com app today. This one started out with, I thought Mason Black was going to have a nice game today, man. After that first inning, he gave up a leadoff single, but then a strike him out, throw him out, double play against Corbin Carroll. Are you kidding me? That was great to see. And then he got a strikeout to end the inning. And I thought to myself, this could be the start of something nice, a nice night for Mason Black, but instead, over the next 2 innings, he would walk 5 batters, and the Diamondbacks would score 4 runs. That pretty much buried the Giants from that point on. Let's get right into Mason Black's night, because this was pretty much the crux of it all, because after that point, the Diamondbacks just kind of poured it on. They had a big 3-run 8th inning, but at that point, it was already over. The Giants only scored 2 runs today on 6 hits and struck out 17 times, only drew 3 walks. But for this one, the Mason Black, man, as I said, had a really hard time throwing strikes, threw more balls than he did strikes, had 70 total pitches, 39 strikes, 41 balls. So not the most, pinpoint accuracy night for Mason Black out there on the hill for the Giants, but just a bummer of a way to end this road trip after it was, they were riding so high on this. They had this 5-game win streak going. It would have been really nice to finish this off with another sweep on the road to end the season. But you can't win them all, but we'll still take a 7-2 road trip to close it out, man. This was one of the best road trips of the Giants season. They played better baseball during the stretch than I've seen them play just with the eye test than at any other point during the season. This team finally looked like they were coming together. And we joked last time about how, obviously this team is playing a lot better now that they have no pressure. And that's something that they really clearly need to improve on going forward next season. And I attribute that entirely to the coaching staff. Yes, you do have a lot of young players on this team who are learning how to, go through this grind for the first time. A lot of these guys, like the Tyler Fitzgeralds, Grant McCrae's, Brett Wisely's, all these dudes, Elliot Ramos, have never been through a push for the playoffs in an MLB season. They haven't done this before. So next year, I do expect this team to be a little bit better going through those dog days of summer, but I need this coaching staff to have everybody ready to go, firing on all cylinders, and realize that you got to show up every day ready to play, and that you can't just take 2 months off in the middle of the season. Yes, injuries were a big part of that as well, but you got to figure out a way to keep your guys loose. I mean, maybe the start of all this road trip stuff was, I don't know why we didn't put this together before. Sean Jelly dressed up as Willy Wonka, and all the Giants rookies dressed up as Oompa Loompas, and maybe that's when they hit the road to start this road trip, and maybe that was what got this team kind of a little loose and playing a little better, is just that kind of small stuff like that. The Giants always do some stuff like this every year with the rookies and making them dress up. Remember a few years ago, Brandon Belt did. It's not just the rookies. Sometimes the rest of the team can get involved as well sometimes too. Brandon Belt a few years ago showed up with the captain hat, and everybody else was like his the deckhands or whatever it was. That was pretty funny. But this one I thought was really good. Everyone showing up as Oompa Loompas for that last flight, and Sean Jelly being the giant Willy Wonka in the middle of it all. That was pretty funny, man. But the Giants, after dropping this one, I'm still taking a lot of positives away from this road trip. For this team to turn it around the way that they did when they had virtually nothing to play for, I think is a good sign. Now, as with every team that's hovering around 500, they're going to make you agonizingly frustrated because they can prove that they can win these games. Like they're not as bad as they seem to be, like you just want them to fall off a cliff so that you can just be like, oh, these guys are terrible, they suck, every single one of these players needs to not return next year, fire this guy, fire that guy, and you can just fire off all those takes and you won't be wrong. But when the team's 500 and they don't fall off the table that much and they win just enough to keep you interested, but lose more than enough to know that, you're not really going anywhere. And so they're right in the middle. And that is a really tough place to be because you're close to being, if you're the Giants, if you're an optimist, you're thinking that they're close to being a good team, that they're right there on the cusp of being a playoff team. If you look at their record in one-run games this year, and if that had been just a little bit better, this team's probably in the mix for a playoff spot. Maybe they still don't make the playoffs coming down at the end of the season here, but they would at least be in the mix, and instead you just have the last month almost of the season just going out there and playing just for vibes, you know what I mean? And building on stuff to work for next year. And that's not where you want to be at the end of the season. If you're a pessimist, you're looking at this and saying the Giants had to scratch and claw their way up through this last month of the season to barely finish around 500, and that this team was one hot streak away. Like if they hadn't turned it on here at the end of the season, they could have finished the season like 6, 7, 8, 9 games below 500. Could have been very possible, especially if this road trip, I mean, think of if the Giants kept playing bad and turned this road trip on its head. I think it's pretty realistic. The Giants could have gone 2-7 on this road trip. I mean, they've been bad on the road all year. Would we really have been that surprised if the Giants ended up going 2-7 on this road trip and ended up 10 games under 500 for the season? I don't think that was out of the question when we started this road trip. So the Giants, to their credit, playing a lot better at the end of the season, found something within themselves, dug deep, playing for pride, or maybe it's just numbers on the back of the baseball card, or just being a pro, whatever it is. The Giants figured out a way to show up and win games this month of August, even though they didn't really have much to play for. And there's going to be a large section of the fan base who doesn't put any stock into that or any merit into that. There was someone who commented on yesterday's show basically saying that these wins mean nothing. And I mean, we were joking with how excited we got about calling the Giants the best team ever assembled and all that. I mean, obviously that, those are just jokes, but I do put some stock into the fact that this team played better at the end of the season, has been playing better, especially on the road, because that tells all these young guys that they can do it. And it was all against playoff teams. So you do this at the end of this season, you win 4 consecutive series on the road to close out the season. Even with the loss today, you still win the series in Arizona. You swept the series in Kansas City. You win the series in Baltimore, and you win the series down in Petco against the Padres, who, man, oh man, the vibes for the Padres might be the best vibes of any baseball team right now, like going into the playoffs. It just looks so fun, man. And that pains me to say it. 1, it's the Padres. What the hell? And 2, it's the Padres. It just is mind-blowing and frustrating. And I don't like things that confuse me. It makes me frustrated. And Padres aren't supposed to be like this fun of a team. Like the vibes have never been this good in San Diego for like my entire lifetime. For like the last 30 years, I cannot remember a Padres team that has been this exciting to watch and has put this together. I mean, Trevor Hoffman intros were fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I like me some AC/DC just as much as the next guy, but this is a whole nother level for the damn Padres. I wish the Giants could get some of that momentum, some of those vibes back at Oracle Park, but they got a long way to go before they're sniffing what the Padres are smelling down there in San Diego. And of course, we're talking about that smell of champagne showers in the locker room post clinching a playoff spot. Ah, man, this Giants team feels a long, long way from that right now. But building blocks to get there start right now. And this team has shown, I mean, tonight we're kind of glossing over what they did tonight, but leading up into tonight, they played really, really, really well over this last, month, like half month of the season. And a lot of it, we got to talk about the starting pitchers. The starting pitchers did a phenomenal job over this stretch. Over their last 16 games coming into today, the Giants starting pitchers have limited opponents to 3 earned runs or fewer in every single one of those games. A 2.18 ERA over that stretch, 20 earned runs over 82.2 innings pitched. And the last week that the Giants starters gave up a total of 8 runs in 49.1 innings while holding opponents to just a 162 batting average against. That's an ERA of 1.46. So, I mean, all that came crashing down today. Mason Black, obviously, could not find the strike zone. He did not look as good as he's looked in other games. As I said at the top of the show, this was a career high in walks for Mason Black. In each one of his last, 4 starts, he had only walked maximum 1 batter in each one of those games. One of those starts, he didn't walk any. So the last time he walked multiple batters was May in one game. So, I mean, he did obviously have that long stretch where he went back down to AAA, worked on his pitch usage, stopped throwing that sweeper so much, and started throwing that fastball more. And that was a good adjustment. And let's, before we get more into Mason Black's day here on this side, let's take a quick break. And on the other side, we can get into the nitty-gritty, the breakdowns of what Mason Black was doing out there. Why did he revert back to old Mason Black? We'll get into that on the other side of the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll be right back. Today's show is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Book today on Booking.com, the official accommodation partner of Major League Baseball, and get the Booking.com app today. Explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about, even your baseball rival cities. I mean, look at Arizona and look at the Diamondbacks down there in the greater Phoenix area. It's pretty fun down there. Got plenty of hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more. Not just there, but all across the nation on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay, even in your baseball rival city during the postseason. Maybe it's time to taste test your baseball competition stadium cuisine. Luckily on Booking.com, you can find the stadium stay that's just right for you. With Booking.com's wide variety of choice across the U.S., you can go incognito to all your baseball rival cities. No matter what team you're rooting for this postseason, Booking.com can make you a fan of any U.S. city. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts and cute bed and breakfast stays, Booking.com has so many choices all across the country. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your baseball rivals. Booking.com, Booking.yeah. And today's show is also sponsored by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Giants postcast, and I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. I'm just taking a quick peek at the comments here before we get into breaking down this Mason Black day, and I'm just seeing fire Farhan, man. I mean, and I get it, dude. I get it. I mean, 6 seasons of no playoffs, and the 6 of 7 seasons, no playoffs. The one that you did get there really felt like a fluke. I mean, I think it's completely safe to say that 107 win season that Gabe Kapler just fell backwards into was not reflective of one, that roster's talent level, and 2, of Gabe Kapler as a manager in Major League Baseball, because you look at the rest of the body of work, it's pretty similar. He's pretty much right on the dot, 500 almost every single year, other than that one single year where all the math seemed to start mathing for the Giants, and all those crunched numbers erupted into home runs and strikeouts. And I mean, the best record in baseball, 107 wins. That was nuts, but not repeatable, not something that the Giants could come back and duplicate. Hence why the Giants moved on from Kapler, got Bob Melvin in here now, and yet they are still 500. But this team does have a little bit more of a direction, I think, at this point in time than they have had in previous seasons. I mean, you've got the direction with the young core. You know that they're going younger. That's at least the plan. It's not just like, well, let's see what we got. And hopefully someone wants to come here in free agency and maybe we'll sign Giancarlo Stanton or Bryce Harper, and we'll just turn the whole franchise around with this one free agent signing there, or none of that right now. They got a good nucleus, a good core to build on. And a lot of it is centered not just around these position players. Obviously, we know Tyler Fitzgerald has had an amazing rookie season. Elliot Ramos, an amazing rookie season. Pat Bailey, even though he's had a terrible second half at the plate, still one of the best young catchers in all of baseball, especially on the defensive side of the plate. Grant McCray, great young prospect for the Giants that has showed a lot like gold caliber type potential, gold glove type potential in the outfield. And Brett Wisely has been a nice piece that is plugged in all over the field for the Giants. But the pitching has really been something that the young pitching is something that we all the Giants fan base was kind of sold on coming into this season. We figured that this would be something the Giants could ride into maybe a playoff berth. Well, I think that may have been getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because it's putting a lot on these young guys, because really thinking about it, I mean, hindsight's 2020, of course, but Logan Webb, he was Logan Webb. Blake Snell signed way too late in the season. I think a lot of Giants fans were expecting him to kind of hit the ground running, and that was a bad assumption to make because obviously dude needed a lot of time to ramp up. And then after that, all of these young pitchers faced adversity like young pitchers do. I mean, there were injuries. There were guys who were just playing bad and got sent up and down from AAA back into the majors and things like that all season long. And you had guys like Keaton Wynn just completely fall apart and get hurt. So a mix of both for some guys. So this year, now that this young crop of pitchers has finally faced some real big league talent, they've been tested and tried at the big league level, trial by fire, forges stronger steel. And that is what I think that the Giants will get next year with this young group of starting pitchers. I mean, Mason Black has been really solid this season at filling up that strike zone. And what he did today that was different, and it reverted more back to like Mason Black instead of what we've seen from him since he's been called back up in his second stint with the big league club this season. Like we were just talking about earlier in the show, earlier this season when he was playing his 4 starts in May, he threw that sweeper at 35% of the time, threw it more than any other pitch, threw that 4-seam fastball about 30% of the time, then threw that sinker about 27% of the time, slider 4.6% and changeup 3.4%. Now, in his last 4 starts coming into this one, he's flipped that around. 4-seam fastball, 34.5% of the time. Sinker, 30.6% of the time. Sweeper, 17% of the time. Now, you look at what he did today, and he threw that sweeper more than anything else. He reverted back to what he was doing the first half of the season and didn't really throw very many. I mean, he threw the sweeper 20 times, through the fastball also 20 times. So I guess both of them were thrown the most. He threw both of those pitches at 20 times, and that was the most that he threw of any pitch. The sinker, he also threw 17 times, the slider 13. So he mixed and matched a lot, but he did obviously go away from the fastball in this one. And I think that has a lot to do with why his accuracy was down. For whatever reason, he just wasn't feeling that fastball today. And I mean, that velocity was sitting right at about 93, got up to 94.7 for his max velo on that fastball. So pretty similar to what we've seen from him for the rest of the season. It just didn't look like he had the best command of it. He wasn't throwing it for strikes. He wasn't dotting those corners like he's so good at doing. And Mason Black's a guy he doesn't have that overwhelming power fastball, but he's got such good pinpoint accuracy that he's super effective with it. And when that's off, his whole game is thrown off because he can't just, reach back and grab that 100-mile-an-hour fastball and just huck it over and just say, challenge fastball up and in, come get it, like a Kyle Harrison. I don't know, Harry doesn't throw 100 miles an hour, but in that kind of vein, the Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong type guy, Mason Black just isn't that. He's not the kind of guy who's going to reach back and grab triple digits and try and just blow you away. He's going to try and beat you with his accuracy and with that big sweeper. And he's going to try and set up his arm slot off the fastball to work other pitches in, like the sweeper, and beat you with his accuracy. He was unable to do that today, as is evident by his pitch usage. He really went away from that fastball. Again, he was throwing that fastball in his last 4 major league starts almost 35% of the time. And tonight he threw it just 29% of the time. So way, way, way down on that fastball usage. And whether or not, that was a direct reason for why his night went the way it did, why he had such a hard time throwing strikes, or I mean, that could be, but I more think it was just that he did not feel very good with that fastball today for one reason or another. That pitch just wasn't working the same for him as it normally does. He wasn't able to control it as well as he normally does, and it led to some walks in this one. 5 walks, and he didn't even walk a guy in that first inning. So all 5 walks came in the second inning. He had 2 walks, and he had 3 more in the 2/3 of an inning that he pitched in the third inning. So tough night for Mason Black, but the offense did not pick him up at all, man. I mean, 17 strikeouts. He only had 3 walks, 32 at-bats, and 17 strikeouts is just abysmal, like beyond bad. More than half of your at-bats end in a strikeout, and every single Giant who came up to the plate today, even Mark Canha, who just had 1 pinch hit at bat, ended up grabbing some pine meat, as Mike Krukow would say, because every single one of them struck out. And if we're looking at Tyler Fitzgerald again, he has another 3 strikeout day, another hat trick for Fitz. It feels like this month of August or September. What month is it again, man? The month of September, Fitzgerald has struck out more, like I feels like in at least half of his at bats. And that's the biggest thing he's got to fix in his swing going into next season. And we know that he's got pop. We know that he's got extra base hit potential. Look at what he did tonight. He had another double tonight, drove in a run. He was one of just 2 Giants with an RBI tonight. Elliot Ramos, your other guy who drove an RBI in, and Ramos was also the only Giant with multiple hits tonight. He had 2 of them. He also drew a walk. So Ramos on base three times in his 4 at bats. That, I mean, he continues to stay hot. He was really hot in the Kansas City series. He had a 3-hit game out there and keeps doing the same thing now. So the offense could have definitely helped out Mason Black, because after Ramos and Fitzgerald, that was it. There was nothing else really to report. I mean, Pat Bailey hit the ball kind of well today. He laced a single into left field. You love seeing Pat Bailey being able to square some things up at this point in the season, because he normally, I say normally, the only 2 seasons that we've seen him have not gone very well at the end of the year. So Pat Bailey continuing to get hits in the month of September does give me bring a little bit of a smile to my face, because that's another thing that the Giants need to shore up. And like, if they can fix some of these little things, tweak some of these little things with these guys, get Fitzgerald to strike out just a little less, get Bailey to stay, I mean, at least somewhat active at the plate in the second half of the season, at least be better than, the worst OPS in the entire second half in all of baseball. That would be great if you could be better than the worst OPS in all of baseball in the second half next season. So, I mean, they got some work to do with him. We've talked about Lamont Wade Jr. and whether or not the Giants should go in a different direction at first base next year. There's a lot of little things the Giants need to shore up. But the one area that I do think they are pretty good in, because we've already seen these pitchers start moving forward, is their starting pitching staff. All these young pitchers, we've seen a lot of good stuff from Landon Roop in the second half of this season. He has been so good. He might be the one I am most excited about. He profiles really well as a starting pitcher, pitches to contact really well. Mason Black is another guy who profiles pretty well in that same kind of vein, pitches to contact a lot better than some of these other guys, and doesn't walk anybody. And neither does Landon Roop. Those 2 guys, Mason Black and Landon Roop, aside from tonight when Black walked a career high 5 batters, those 2 guys rarely walk hitters. And I really like the way that they get the ball over the plate for strikes and let their defense do some work behind them. And I think that will bode very well for this Giants team next year, especially if they're able to sign an impact player up the middle, someone who can play short with a really solid glove, and you can move Fitzgerald over to second base and let him grow and learn at that position, and just focus on more on hitting, because I think he's fine as a second baseman. I think he's got a lot of work to do as a shortstop, however, but he's also got a lot of work to do at the dish. So I think that this would take some development, pressures off of Tyler Fitzgerald and allow him to focus just on, not striking out so much, man. Who knows? Maybe the Giants go out and also, in addition to that big glove up the middle that they need, maybe they'll go get a big bat over at first, let Lamont Wade Jr. kind of play the role that Mark Canha is currently playing, get Mark Canha the hell out of here, and get someone like Pete Alonso to go play first base. And for the love of God, please, somebody maybe hit 3 home runs hit 30 home runs before this season ends. I tipped my hand a little bit. Only 3 more home runs needed for Matt Chapman. If he wants, he can get to 30. He's the only shot that the Giants have at having a 30 home run season. We got 3 more games at home. Matt Chapman could do it. He could do it, but he's going to need to get hot over these last 3 games. Chappie tonight, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. So that no home runs there in that one. So we got to take a quick break here. On the other side, some more news and notes from today's final road trip of the season. The Giants wrap up this road trip 7-2, and that was an amazing run. Had to come to an end at some point, but ultimately the Giants, a great end to their road baseball stretch to finish out the season 7-2 on the road after, playing just abysmal all year on the road. To salvage this season was something. I do think that is something. It's not nothing. And it doesn't salvage the season in the sense of making the playoffs, but it salvages the season in the sense of you can get back to around 500, finish better than you finished last year, and keep building in the right direction. Because if they had just fallen off a cliff at the end of the year, man, I don't see how you could have good vibes about this team going into next year. And I think that matters a lot. We're going to take a quick break here on the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll be right back. Today's show is also sponsored by Game Time. I love live events, from concerts to sporting events and everything in between, and I rely on Game Time to get my tickets. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I also love the all-in pricing feature. Toggling this feature on shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Game Time also gives customers the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Receipt of copy does not constitute an order. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Welcome back to the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. Today, the Giants fall 8-2 to the Diamondbacks. I'm taking a quick peek at the chat just one more time before we wrap up this show. And Vino Chris says 7-2 means Farhan stays. He actually said Farman, but I know what he means, Farhan. And I guess I don't know that the end of this season really changed that too much, but I do think Farhan's coming back. I mean, we had all the conflicting reports of different Bay Area beat writers. You know, you had the Andrew Baggerly camp saying that, you know, the owners, or, you know, Buster Posey and the owners were kind of undercutting Farhan to go sign Matt Chapman and redo that deal. While you had the Susan Slusser camp kind of saying that was a little bit of a misrepresentation, and that Buster didn't really do anything more than ownership groups normally do when signing a player to that type of a contract. And Andrew Baggerly doubled down, defended his report after the Susan Slusser report came out. So it kind of depends on which one you're vibing with. And I do think that Andrew Baggerly was onto something. I do think that there is some merit to what he was saying. I don't think that that's the normal scope of an ownership group member like Buster Posey, who's generally just a guy who's like a figurehead. That guy's usually not on the boots on the ground getting deals done. You know, a former player in the ownership group. Like, let's take Tom Brady, for example. And I know it's the NFL, not the MLB, but you think Tom Brady's getting involved in the Raiders contract negotiations? Hell no, he's not. I mean, he might show up as like a guy to try and help sell someone on signing with the team, but he's not sitting there hammering out like a no trade clause with them, which is supposedly what Buster Posey did. And I think that has some merit to it. I think that shows that Farhan's leash is short, but I don't think that they're getting rid of him this offseason. Now, the Giants could surprise us. I also didn't expect them to fire Gabe Kapler last year after I definitely didn't expect them to fire him like 2 or 3 games before the end of the season. It was pretty wild that they just got him on out of here just like that, but didn't even let him finish the season. But I don't think I don't think that Farhan's going to be gone next year. I think that they'll give him one more shot. I think that he's got enough kind of, you know, cachet with the Bryce Eldridge developments and in the way that some of these other prospects have popped, the not Marco Luciano, that's been a big issue, but like the Tyler Fitzgeralds and the Elliot Ramoses and the way that the Chapman deal ended up working out, if they can get Blake Snell back here in a timely manner, I think that maybe people start to, it changes how you look at Farhan a little bit. If he's able to get that deal done at the beginning of free agency and it doesn't drag out, which I don't have a lot of confidence that will happen, but I think that they're going to give him the opportunity to do that because do you have a better chance at re-signing Blake Snell if you bring in a different GM at this point? I'm going to say no. And I think for the Giants, that's their number one priority in this offseason is to re-sign Blake Snell. Number two priority, get a glove up the middle of the field that can still play offense at some level because we don't need to redo Nick Ahmed. I'm not saying let's run that back, but I mean, get somebody who can, field a ground ball and go, use a backhand unlike Marco Luciano and maybe go out and get a big bopper to play first base. And that's a long wish list for the Giants. We can just start with the Blake Snell thing. But I do think Farhan gives you your best chance at re-signing Blake Snell right now. And as much as it pains me to say it, I think that's the direction the Giants got to go. I do not like Farhan as the GM / president of baseball operations for this team. It has been rough. But is there a better option right now to go get your top priorities done this offseason? I don't know, man. Maybe there is. I'm not saying that there definitively isn't. But I do tend to feel at this point like Farhan is probably the best guy to get that Blake Snell deal done. And maybe this end of the season winning streak gave him just enough goodwill to last through this offseason into next year. Vino Chris chiming in with one last comment before we get on out of here saying Willie Adames, and man, oh man, that would be a phenomenal addition to this team. That's all the time that we got for you guys today on the Locked On Giants postcast. Off day tomorrow, only 3 more Giants games. They come back to Oracle Park for Fan Appreciation Weekend. Starts on Friday against the Cardinals. The Giants were swept by the Cardinals in their prior series against them this year. Remember the Rickwood series. So the Giants looking to get a little bit of revenge and finish this season on a high note. You couldn't win it for Willie back then. Let's win these last games for Willie Mays, man. Let's do it. Sweep these Cardinals and get on to the 2025 MLB season. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Locked On Giants postcast. I'm your host, Eric Triple E Engel. We'll see you next time. Peace.